Hello, World Wide Web. Welcome to the Hanging with Web show. I'm GW Pomichter. We are at Suncoast Fan Fest all weekend long. We're hanging out with some fantastic people. Right now, we get to hang out with actor Corin Nemec. Corin, how are you,
What
brother?
up? I'm doing good, man. Good
to
see you as well.
All right.
Good to see you as well.
Now, you guys have heard the story about 1,000,000 times. I've apologized enough. Not going to do that anymore. But Corin and I had a connection before we got here we didn't know about, and that was SS Doom Trooper. And all my friends from college just went, "You son of a bitch." That's right, because that was James's first role working with you. His first, real.
Yeah, Pomichter
role.
was great. We had a fantastic time on that.
And so I made everybody watch it. Because I got to watch my.
Well, if that's the case, then there's a very funny story about that. Is that when we did the scene on the airplane? Okay, great. Now listen, if you ever do find SS Doom Trooper anywhere,
which by the way,
it's two different movies. There's a good movie in it, which is like us, and we're in World War II, and then there's the Creature, then there's the Doom Trooper, which is just the worst CGI.
And we weren't there yet.
Oh, it was the worst CGI ever.
Yeah.
But so we had this scene where we're all jumping out of the airplane to parachute into Nazi Germany, and so they had this pad, like a big mattress pad thing right outside. But with all the gear we had on, no one could get up and move in time. So we just had to jump out and land on the other person. And by the time it was my time, because I was the last one left, literally there was like 8 guys all piled up, a dog pile, and I was like, ha-ha. I'm in. And just launched and landed on all of them. We were laughing our butts off. James will remember that. That was one of the funniest things ever. Oh, it was so funny.
And he would call and tell stories. It was just a fun set to be on.
Yeah, we had a great time, man. It was good stuff.
And you know what? Good. You guys remember, sci-fi is one of those really great genres.
Yeah.
Because there's this stuff that we can take super, super serious. And no matter how silly or out there it is, it's zombies and spaceships and dragons.
Hey, I've fought dragon wasps and sand sharks and raging sharks and mansquitoes.
I was going to say
robo-crocs.
Giant insects. That was one of my favorites there, yeah. And you see, but you do all this stuff, and there's stuff you can take really, really seriously. And then there's just good, fun, campy sci-fi.
Yeah.
That just, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. It makes fun of the things we love.
Yeah.
In a way that shows that we're not entirely crazy.
Yeah.
We don't actually think there's a dragon coming for us. We do know. I just ruined that guy's whole day. I mean, there's somebody out there that's like, what? No dragons?
No dragons?
What? So, what are you working on now, man? What are you up to?
Actually, I have a film coming out, hopefully later this year called Day Labor, and really cool kind of action thriller type thing.
Awesome.
I play a super redneck in it. Which
really, guys, if you guys do the IMDb search or whatever on Corin, because you guys got to know, that's not a word typically. That's acting. This is a city guy.
I mean, I'm from Arkansas.
Well,
Our city, our biggest city is Little Rock, which is tiny.
Hence, they named it Little Rock.
Well, they actually have the Little Rock on the Arkansas River right outside of downtown that it's named after, and it's a rock that's like shorter than your bench. And it's just this tiny rock on a little hillside, and the whole thing, and you go and you're like, I want to see the Little Rock. I went and saw it, and I was like, this is it. I was picturing like Little Rock, like being like a bigger, like at least my height,
Yeah,
The thing is like,
they didn't go for dramatic irony. It was a little rock.
It's similar to in Spinal Tap when they lowered down the Stonehenge in Spinal Tap. It was like 11 inches. 11 inches.
That's great.
So that's coming out. I just did another film called The Choice, which I co-wrote with director Brian Skiba. It's kind of a thriller, action thriller type deal.
Awesome.
The same producers called Torque Films, same producers from Day Labor,
nice.
also produced this. And then I am leaving from here. When I leave Florida, I go straight to Flint, Michigan to start work on Half Dead Fred. Half Dead Fred is a good friend of mine, Braun Theron. He's the writer-director of it, and it's about a detective medium who talks to the dead and all of that, it corresponds with the ghosts. But he can only do it when he's imbibed some alcohol, and he doesn't really want to drink anymore, but he has to for his job. So
it's rough. It's a rough job. It is. Wow. Now you know how that proverbial hard-boiled detective with always got the glass. Now you know why.
Yeah,
you can't do the job without it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And why I love the genre of the film is, again, it is you would throw it in the horror genre, but it's much more of kind of like a mystery thriller in a way,
Nice, yeah.
But also it has a film noir kind of vibe to it. So it's like
awesome.
Chinatown, but with ghosts. You know what I mean?
What's not to love?
I know, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
man.
it's rad.
So, like, for those of us who are old enough to remember, kicking off television with Parker Lewis.
Parker Lewis can't lose.
That's
yeah, no
right.
doubt, no doubt.
What was a moment there in your young life when you just said acting? You gotta tell mom and dad, I'm going to do something for my life, and it's going to be acting.
Yeah. Well, my dad is a production designer.
Okay.
He was production designer on. He still is a production designer, but he did T2, Patriot Games, The Saint, The Shadow, Twister,
Like
a bunch of huge movies. And he was art director on Goonies.
Okay.
And the movie Goonies was my favorite film when it came out, and I was about 10 years old or so when the movie came out. And my mom was also in the arts and entertainment business as a graphic designer in the music business. So
awesome!
She did a lot of music posters for all the bands that were coming through Atlanta at the time where I was living, for a company called Standing Room Only. They were like the biggest promotional company. They did everybody. I mean, you know, if Iron Maiden was coming to town, they were the promotional company putting them up. If
awesome.
Joan Jett and the Blackhearts
and
or anybody. I mean, I saw everybody. Hall & Oates in Chicago and Jay Giles Band.
So there was a
in
natural
Asia.
bridge to this world.
Yeah. So when the movie came out, that's when I realized, because I'd been out to LA and been on sets with my dad, and I understood. Like my dad was one of the set designers on V, this TV series V.
Yes. Awesome.
And so I was out there visiting him when he was working on V. So I got to go and see the sets and walk around. It was all futuristic and spaceships, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. You know? And but I didn't think about being in the industry until Goonies came out, and then I harkened back to being on set with my father and seeing how they did everything and how they capture it, and I was like, that's what these kids got to do? Like that's what
that's
they
a
get to
job?
do that's a job. So I was like, it's on. And then my mom ended up working for Nederlander, which owns the Fox Theaters and Pantages and all that, doing graphic design work in the theater business. And transferred to the Pantages Theater in Los Angeles for the graphic design department there from the Fox Theater in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And we ended up moving out there. And as soon as I landed, a kid I was in school with in 8th grade named David Van Gorder was famous at the time for being in a music video called "Hot for Teacher" by Van Halen.
Yep, I remember
that. He was Waldo, the nerd that was hot for the teacher.
Yeah, gotcha.
And he was in one of my classes, and I was just like, dude, I totally want to act. And he's like, well, come and check out my acting class I'm in. He was in an acting class called Center Stage LA, directed by a guy named Kevin McDermott. He was the artistic director, and it turned out to be the #1 kids acting school in LA. Like,
just
you know,
score.
Yeah,
wow.
I mean, it was like I couldn't have landed someplace better, because I mean, when he did a showcase, agents and managers would pack his place. I mean, he was such a good teacher, though. He really knew how to. We did a lot of improvisation.
Now, how old are you at this point?
I was 11, 12 years old.
11, 12 years old.
Yeah. So but we did a lot of improvisation.
It's quite something for a teacher to bring that out.
Well, that's 11, what it was. It was the
kids,
improv that did it, and then he actually had. He ended up launching, because improv was so successful in his class, and in getting young actors out of, like, you know, their fear of stage and all of that stuff, mm-hmm. and being able to act organically and respond naturally to events and conversations or whatever. But he ended up having a comedy troupe called Off the Wall that was all kids between the age of 12 and 17. And wow. I worked with them for a short time. I became a professional actor pretty quick out of the gate. But I did a couple of shows with them, but they were performing at the Laugh Factory, the Comedy Store, the Improv, and all the big places. Yeah. But they do early shows, you know, 'cause 12 to 17, they weren't like, you're not the midnight one, but we were like 6 p.m. We'd be up there and doing like an hour show, and it was a blast. I mean, that was like such a good time,
That's
a good time.
Cool,
yeah,
man. That is awesome. So, you found a really great niche here in sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah.
Between Stargate and all the Sci-Fi Pictures originals and things like that. So you've been doing the conventions a while.
Sure. Yeah.
And I know you did the European convention circuit for a while.
Yeah.
Most fun, memorable that we can talk about on camera. Fan interaction.
I'd say the most memorable it was when my character Jonas Quinn was first being launched for Stargate, and I was in Orlando at a convention there that was predominantly Star Trek. It might have even been a specifically Star Trek convention, but it was like that was their thing. And somehow I got booked into it, and none of my episodes had even aired on Sci-Fi Channel yet.
So not only is it not your show, but it's not your your characters.
They didn't even, my character wasn't even launched yet, so
hey,
they're
here's
like,
Corin, he plays
he's on Stargate,
our guy.
and plus they didn't like, they're all Star Trek, so they're like Stargate,
yeah.
and I was walking down the hall, going back to my room, and this giant Klingon. I'm talking. The guy had to be like 6'8" and like 420 pounds. He was a big behemoth. Yeah, he was just absolutely huge dude, and he's talking in his Klingon accent and stuff. He was in full character, and I was wearing this shirt that had like an old 1950s wrestler on it, and it said like blue collar wrestling, and he goes, "Hey, you wrestle?" I was like, no, it's just a shirt. And he goes, you can't wear the shirt if you don't wrestle. And he was obviously drunk on blood wine. The guy was really hammered, and he immediately went in for the kill. And so started wrestling me to the ground in the hallway. And there's like other Klingons standing around. They're like, ha, 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 ha,
yeah,
ha.
like, I'm 5'9" with a T-shirt on, dude. And look at you guys.
Yeah, so he's literally wrestling me to the ground. And I'm like, is this happening right now? Like, is this really going on? And as I'm going down to the ground, I'm trying to get out of his grip. I look up, and like a whole group of Star Trek.
Somebody check my rider. Is wrestling in it?
Yeah, so a whole group of Star Trek characters go by in their uniforms, looking like they just got off the deck of the ship. And I'm like, no help here? Like, isn't this your arch enemy?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? And so I ended up squeezing out of his grip. And I was like, I can't go back that way because that's where my room is. So I had to run to the elevator.
Nice.
And this is a true story.
Chased by Klingons.
And I'm literally running to the elevator like.
Again, how many stories start with I was chased by Klingons?
So it took him so long to get up off the ground because he was so big. I had time to get to the elevator, but it was like one of those horror films. I'm in the elevator, hitting the lobby button, waiting for it to close.
Please.
And he's like, he's coming for me. And it's like, shink. I was like, oh, Lord. I was like, it was my very first convention I ever did.
That's the first time.
It was the very first one I ever did, and so I was like, "Is this how all of them are going to be?" Because I don't know if I'm down.
Yeah. This is going to be, it's great.
I'm gonna have to bring my Zat next time.
Something, just anything, 10
Just bring
guys.
Chris Judge with me.
Yes.
Bring Teal'c
Just so
along
you can
every time.
stand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Indeed.
That is awesome, man.
Yeah.
So
wild time.
Welcome back to sunny Florida anyway.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And you having a good time?
Yeah, great time. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching. We've been hanging out with Corin Nemec. Remember, everybody, stay tuned in and stay logged on and see who we're hanging with next. Corin, love it.